guys, what is going on? Blossom's back, and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives. Now, I haven't posted in 2 days, and usually when it takes me some time to post, it means one of two things. Either I'm really busy, or I have a big statistical video that took some time to set up. Well, in today's case, it was both. I was really busy, and I have a big statistical video for you guys today. It's a pretty interesting one because it's going to be American Overdrive in retrospect. Like, how useful were all my cars in American Overdrive? Obviously, I like to say things like, oh, this car is useful, this car is not useful because of yada 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 yada. But I think the most real aspect are going to be in the numbers, right? Because obviously when we start the update, everyone gets different cars. They get all the cars from the same update, sure, but everyone is dealt a different hand. What were the most useful cars for me in my garage personally? We're gonna talk about a lot of that and all different stats because, as you can see over here, I made this big ass, Excel spreadsheet which basically tracks every single fully upgraded American Overdrive car that I have from uncommon all the way down to epic, and then I added in the 3 legends as well. It brings in all the stats like how many days I've owned it, how many races I've done, what's the win percentage, and the most important thing that I want to talk about is the race per day. Now, I've done videos like this on the channel before. They're pretty rare because they take a long time to set up, but the most important thing is the race per day, in my opinion. So the race per day is basically how many times I use the car per day since the day I unpacked it in my garage. So, for example, this Buick Somerset, right? So I've owned it for 51 days. I've only raced it 11 times. It's at a win ratio of 82%, but I'm pretty sure I only used it in challenges. So I used it about 0.22 times a day. So I want to start off with that number, actually. Let's talk about my top 5 cars per rarity, uncommon to epic. What were my most used cars from American Overdrive, okay? So we're gonna start off with RQ28, and it is actually a Buick. Where is it? RQ28 Buick Encore. There you go. This has a race per day ratio of 0.9. I've raced it 57 times in 63 days, and it has a win ratio of 75%. Now, moving on, in 4th place on my 4th most used uncommon. Now, I think that this is a pretty decent way of showing what has been the most useful cars in my garage for American Overdrive, because for example, the Buick GS400 is a fantastic car. It's going to be Blossom choice. And it's going to be a car that I'll probably use in clubs a lot. But as it stands right now, I've only owned it for 63 days. I've only raced it 51 times. And it has a great win ratio. But the thing is, it's not in my top 5, which is really interesting. So that means I didn't really use it that much, maybe in challenges. I feel like I've been using it more often recently. I recently maxed out my 2nd Buick GS400 today. Well, maxed out, I didn't put in the cash upgrades yet, so that's why you don't see it here. But in 2nd place actually comes as the Buick Questor. So that's an RQ24, I believe it's a low ground clearance standard. Yes, it is. So this one right here, I've owned it for 69 days. I've raced it 67 times with a win ratio of 82%, which is really insane. So basically, I've used this car more times than the Buick. Even though the Buick is probably, well, it is the better car, it's interesting to see what is the car that I use more. I had to use the Questor a lot in challenges. I remember that. It was also one of the few standards that I had at the time. So like I said, everyone is dealt a different hand. This might be a more used car in my garage because I got it really early on, right? Like I said, like the update's 69 days old. This car has been in my garage since the start. So I've been using it since the beginning, and obviously this is bound to have more races because I use it as a time where this was the only car I had to use. So it's interesting. It's really interesting to see what my top 5 are. Now moving on to the top 3, we're gonna start off RQ20. It is the Chevy XP897 GT. Now I have 2 of these, so I believe it is one of these 2, the older one. So that's 58 days. This is 65 days. So this has a race per day ratio of 1.22. I've raced it 79 times in 65 days. Moving on, in 2nd place is my drag spec El Dorado. This is a car that is fantastic. I know I got, some heat for saying that this thing was bad. It's kind of funny because I was actually watching, what was it, Mike's Top Drives, and I think he said something like he also didn't rate this car. So I feel you in that way, On paper, this is a car that maybe, doesn't bring a lot of value at first sight. But when you finally think about more of the in-depth niches in the game, then you kind of realize how useful this car ends up being. So 332, I've used it 1.32 times a day, basically. 83 races, 63 days, okay? But that isn't even first place. First place, I couldn't believe my eyes, is actually the RQ29 Buick Regal LS. Regal, let me do that again. I mean, it is an OG car, right? So I had it on the first day since of the update, 69 days old, 120 races. But here's the kicker, 94% win ratio. That's good. That's really good for over 100 races. Anyway, the race per day ratio of this car is 1.74. Yeah, 94. I'm impressed. I mean, obviously it helped me a lot in challenges and multiplayer events and maybe even clubs. So there you go, 120 events. I mean, I don't think I even used it 120 times in the trials, so I had to use it in some other situation. Okay. Now let's move on to the rares. So rare, we're starting off with the Buick Roadmaster. So where is that beautiful car? There it is, the Roadmaster wagon. Again, 67 days, so not 69. 73 races, 93% win ratio. Again, I don't know where all these races are coming from. Maybe, you know what? I do remember using this car very often in the trials. So it's good to know that you can, rely on an RQ31, which is basically an entry-level rare for the trials. As long as you max it out, it'll bring you the value. Now, hopefully this helps you guys learn about, the trials as well, to see what were the cars that I use the most. Because ideally, the cars that I use the most in each rarity, for the lower rarities, are cars that I use a lot in the American Overdrive trials. The Volt is next with a race per day ratio of 1.15. I've had it for 67 days as well, so as old as the Buick, and I raced it for 77 races with a 90% win ratio. In third place is the Chevrolet Legedaries, the South Korean based, 87 races, 69 days, 84% win ratio. And then moving on is the Chrysler Thunderbolt. So performance. We're using a lot of performance, right? So 102 races, 52% win ratio. So that's not too good. Owned it for 67 days. But even though the win ratio is low, the amount of races I've used it in is high. So I probably use it in many situations to lose by 50, which is still a win. And last but not least, my most used car is the Buick Grand National for rares. Now it's one of these two, definitely not the 51, so it has to be this one. Yep, there you go, 65 days old, 141 races with a 78 win ratio. That gives me a race per day average of 2.17. I use this car 2 times a day on average. Now, moving on to super rares. In fifth place, we start off with the 44 Malibu. I do use this car 1.06 times a day. Again, it's old from the first day, 69. 73 total races, 88% win ratio. So this is the car that I use in challenges a lot. I think the ones that we're really need to look out for are the cars that are not 69 days old, but made it to the top 5. Next up is the Buick Riviera. So this one right here, the Riviera Concept. 69 days, again, 73% win ratio. In third place, this one is definitely not 69 days, I believe, is the Cheel, 63 days. So I got it a week later. 71 races, 77% win ratio. This is the 233 version, which is better than my 323 version on City Street Small and Medium. In second place, it's the Impala SS. This one right here. I think this is an OG one too. 69, 67. 77 races, 95 win ratio, has a 1.15 race per day average, and then a huge jump. My most used super is an RQ49. It's the Chevrolet Impala. So I've had it for 63 days, 130 races, 97% win ratio. So this has been my most used super rare, and it wasn't even on the first batch of cars that I got for the update. So very impressive. I do remember using this car a lot in very early American Overdrive events and multiplayer challenges, all that sorts of stuff. It's been a fantastic servant for my garage. What's pretty interesting is that the Charger GT, I believe, is even older, 67, but I've not used it nearly as much as the Impala. So there you go. The Charger did not make it to top 5. Now, moving on to the ultra rares, we're going to start off with the Chevy S SS. Ooh, this is an interesting one. This is the one that I thought I'd be using a lot more. I believe it's the drag spec version. I actually did not write down. Well, this is 63, and this is 60. No, it has to be the 67 days, right? 140 races, 74% win ratio. I use it 2.09 times a day, so 2 times a day. So you can see a pattern, a trend, right? My most used uncommons, they start from 0.9 to 1.74. My most used rares go from 1.06 to 2.06. Oh, sorry, super rares 1.06 to 2.06. Then ultra rares, they start at 2.09 and it's gonna go up to 2.88. So basically what I'm saying here is that at the end of the day, you're still gonna be using the ultra rares, epics, and legendaries the most. Now moving on, RQ57, and honestly the lower rarities were all used for challenges, and that was about it. Okay, era is next, 57 era. So whatever the older one is 54, and this is 40, so it has to be this one most likely. 115 races, 63% win ratio. I use it 2.13 times a day. 64 is next. Ooh, this one's an interesting one. This has a win ratio of 43%. Very, very low. But that was because it was losing everything for me in the Radical Final. And also it has so many races because of the Radical Final. So I've used it 58 times in 26 days, giving it an average of 2.23 times a day with a win ratio of 43%. That has boosted stats because it was used in the Radical Final. The next one was also heavily used in the final with a very low win percentage. Is the GMC Sierra, which I use in the Koenigsegg Final. This has an average race per day ratio of 2.66. I've owned it for 67 days, so since the start, 178 races with also a win percentage of 43%. And my most used ultra rare, I'm really surprised that the Cadillac IQ didn't make the top 5. My most used one goes to the Silverado 1500. So off-roads basically are being the most useful ones that you see over here. I raced it on average of 2.88 times a day. It has a win ratio of 77%, 150 races in 53 days. That is high. Now we move on to epics. We're going to start off with RQ73 as a CT4. So CT4 is 3.04 races a day, 84% win ratio. I've raced it 200 times in 67 days. Second place is the Camaro SSX. 220 races in 67 days, and it has a win ratio of 90%. This gives it an average of me using it 3.28 times per day. The Cadillac Escalade V comes up next with an average of 3.45 times a day. I've used it 231 times in 67 days with a win ratio of 71%. Then in second place is the Cadillac CT5, which I have at 233. Won me 2 prize cars. I believe it was a Mazda and definitely the Koenigsegg. I use it an average of 5.38 times a day. I've only owned it for 42 days, but I've already raced it 226 times with a win ratio of 78. Yes, I can attest. One of the most useful cars in my garage from American Overdrive. Not only was it super useful in 2 tri-series, I use it really often in dailies. And even in clubs, if it's club standard 5 times or rear-wheel drive 5 times with a Storm Chaser, CT5, one of the first cars I'm using. This thing is actually really, really useful, so I'm really happy. But the most useful epic is the Cadillac CT4V Black. No surprise, this thing has won me 3 freaking tri-series, dude. I use it on an average of 6.05 times a day, 242 races with a win ratio of 80%. Whatever American Overdrive event has existed, this car has been like one of the best options to use. I swear, like this thing is so good and so useful and so versatile. So if we move on to my top 5 cars in general, 5th place goes to the CT5. And then 4th, oh, no, not by ratio, but this is literally by sheer amount of races, I believe. So if it's sheer amount of races, 226 goes to the CT5. And then the next one is Escalade V with 231, and then it was CT4, no, not this one, or CT4V, no, I don't want to buy slots, CT4V with 242, and then my top 2 cars, I'm gonna get rid of fully upgraded. Oh, and I'm also gonna get rid of all these rarities over here. The top 2 goes to the legendaries. It's actually the C8R with 247 races, and the Draco GTE, my most used one, of 404. My goodness, it's a lot. So here's one way to look at it. Let's look at let's look at days owned. I'm gonna days owned. So my oldest cars, as you can see, a lot of cars here are 69 days old. Among the OGs are my first Ultra. There you go. The Chevy Equinox, the Chevy Camaro Concept, Durango, Hornet. Yeah, you guys remember this? This is all from that 2 million opening that we did at the start of the update. All these super rares came on the first day. All these rares came on the first day, and all of these uncommons came on the first day. So the most recent American Overdrive car that I've had fully upgraded is the Corvette Astrovet. Okay, that makes sense. I've had it for about 2 weeks, so I've actually not fully upgraded an American Overdrive car in 2 weeks. That's a lie, because I did upgrade the Buick, but I've not put in the cash upgrade, so that might have been the oldest one. But yeah, everything else is, yeah, I guess you can say that the hype kind of died 2 weeks ago for me. So the hype of American Overdrive lasted from 69 all the way to 14, I guess. So whatever amount of days, that's it. That's pretty interesting. Let's look at a win ratio. Let's look at a win ratio. So we go from the highest, I guess. I forgot to put the percentage on this. So if I can change that, boop. I'm not sure if that's gonna change. Z-Day. There you go. Okay, so. I mean, there are a lot of 100%, but the ones that you need to highlight are probably the ones with more than 50 races. And the first one that actually goes up on that list is Wyatt, the C8R, 247 races, 100% win ratio. Next up is the Chevy SS, actually. This is my drag spec one. 53 races, 98% win ratio. Then the Stingray C8 with 54 races and a 98% win ratio. So yeah, there's a lot there too. What else? I think we already talked about races. I'll just show it to you real quick. So my most raced car is the Draco GTE, right? Followed by the C8, Blackwing Escalade C5. My most raced rare is the Grand National. My most race is the Impala, the Regal, which all makes sense with the race per day ratios that we've been seeing in the top 5. GMC Sierra is my most raced Ultra, so actually more races in the Sierra than the Silverado, but the Silverado has a better race per day ratio. So basically I use it more per day. It's just that the GMC is just older, so that's why it's on top. Yeah, pretty interesting. One of the most useless ones, I guess. What is this being filtered by again? It's being filtered by races per day, I think. Races, yeah. So I guess towards the bottom, we've got a couple at 0. I've used the Yukon XL Denali once. Yeah. So what's my least used epic? It's going to be this one, right? The Corvette Stingray 54. I don't think there's another epic below. There you go. So I don't know if you guys learned something from this. As you can see, at the end of the day, the majority of stuff that you're going to use are going to be high-end. My most raced cars are Legends, Epics, Ultras. Yeah, there's a couple, there are 2 rares in the top 20. There's 1 uncommon and 1 super rare in the top 20. But everything else is just Ultra, Epic, and Legend. So there you go, man. At the end of the day, Top Drives, still a high-end game. It is still a high-end game. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for today. I hope you guys found that helpful. I don't know. I found that really interesting to just take some time and sit down and look at the stats and see what everything is about. Yeah, it's I'm really happy to get the Draco, man. This thing has been really useful. I know I wasn't too psyched about getting it as my first ever Legend from this update. I really wanted something more of from a Chevy or a Cadillac or something like that. But this thing has been so freaking useful. And it's probably going to be useful again in that Bugatti final. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Hope you found today's episode interesting. And I hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe, wash your hands. Blossom out. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly, got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly, got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Sit back, relax in my Bonneville Pontiac. Hold tight